Welcome to WhiskyCast, cask strength conversation featuring news and interviews from the world of whiskey. I'm Mark Gillespie, and this is episode number 1165 for June 7th, 2026. Coming up in a few minutes.
Heirloom corns take some special care. They're really awesome because you can keep growing them and keep getting the same thing, but they take special care. So we harvest the seeds, keep them in a safe condition all winter, and then plant them back the following spring.
Joyce Nethery owns Jeptha Creed Distillery in Shelbyville, Kentucky with her family, and her husband Bruce grows all of the corn used in their bourbons on the family farm, including Bruce's Blue, an heirloom varietal he developed. It's the heart of Bruce's Blue bourbon, which the distillery just released. I'll talk and taste with Joyce Nethery later on WhiskyCast In-Depth. And I'll have my tasting notes for Bruce's Blue, too. We'll also have Behind the Label and much more. The news is next on this week's WhiskyCast, whiskey's longest-running and most awarded podcast series.
Hey friends, it's Gabriel with Jewers here. If you're watching the U.S. Open this year, or you've got Father's Day coming up and you just want to get it right, there's a bottle that I would keep an eye out for. I'll explain.
Let's get started with the week's news. A buyer has been found for Uncle Nearest. Receiver Philip Young notified the court this week that he has a signed letter of intent to buy the Uncle Nearest brand and the distillery in Shelbyville, Tennessee. The buyer has not been named, but Young says it's an African-American-led investment firm that will carry on the legacy of Nearest Green. A formal purchase agreement is expected in the next 45 days, and the buyer will be revealed at that time. There's no word on whether founder Fawn Weaver has a future role with Uncle Nearest. Wanted to follow up on a story we broke last week, Heaven Hill's decision to shut down the Few Spirits Distillery in Evanston, Illinois. I received a statement from Heaven Hill late Sunday night after the episode had already dropped. Here's part of it. Few remains an important part of our American whiskey portfolio and a brand that has played a meaningful role in the evolution of modern American whiskey. Our decision to discontinue production at the Few Distillery reflects a site-specific operational evaluation. It does not change our commitment to the Few brand. We have a thoughtfully planned inventory of Few whiskey that will allow us to continue supporting the brand while preserving the authenticity and character that have defined it from the beginning. Consumers can expect the same Few whiskey that reflects the brand's heritage and origins. One of the strengths of Heaven Hill is our broad network of whiskey operations and our experience nurturing brands over the long term. We remain committed to honoring Few's legacy, preserving what makes the brand distinctive, and ensuring it continues to have a place within our portfolio for years to come. No decision has been made on where Few whiskey will be produced in the future, and the other distilleries Heaven Hill bought when it acquired Sampson & Surrey in 2022, including Widow Jane, are not affected by this move. In other news, Brown-Forman reported its latest earnings this week, and for the fiscal year, reported net sales decreased 1% compared to the previous year. Operating income was down by 10%, and earnings per share were off by 17%. The earnings missed analyst estimates by 20 cents a share. CFO Jim Peters projects 2027 to be much like 2026, with a downward trend continuing in the U.S. and developed international markets, to be offset by growth in emerging markets and travel retail. CEO Lawson Whiting told analysts the proposed merger with Pernod Ricard fell apart because the two sides could not find the proper fit. He declined to offer specifics or address Sazerac's $15 billion offer for the company. Last year, Wes Henderson told us about his plans to build a distillery near his Kentucky Castle resort to make whiskey for his new True Story brand. Henderson told the Lexington Herald-Leader this week those plans are on hold indefinitely because of the, quote, perfect storm hitting the bourbon industry. He's facing 2 lawsuits filed against his companies over unpaid debts of nearly $1.5 million related to the distillery project. Henderson declined to comment on the lawsuits, which were filed by an architectural firm and Peggy No Stevens' consulting business. Meanwhile, another Kentucky distillery has laid off workers. Contract distiller Whiskey House of Kentucky laid off 22 workers Tuesday, about 30% of its workforce. In a statement, CEO David Mandel said the industry is navigating a cyclical slowdown and decisions had to be made to protect the long-term health of the company. The laid-off workers will receive severance pay, continued benefits, and career transition assistance. The distillery opened in Elizabethtown, Kentucky 2 years ago and focuses on contract distilling exclusively. It was built by a team of Bardstown Bourbon Country alumni. Mandel says production is at about 60% of capacity right now. Sazerac is releasing its new A.J. Bond Tennessee whiskey exclusively in Tennessee to start. The whiskey is named for the bond between master distillers Alyssa Henley and the late John Lunn. As Alyssa told us back in April, the whiskey is a blend of pot still and column still distillate. You can hear the interview with Alyssa in the archives at whiskycast.com. Four Roses is releasing its oldest whiskey on record. The 21-year-old Origin Bourbon kicks off the distillery's new anthology series, which will be an annual release highlighting the Four Roses heritage. It'll be available starting July 10th at the Four Roses Visitors Center in Lawrenceburg, Kentucky, and at a special pop-up shop at the original Four Roses offices on Louisville's Whiskey Row, July 11th. Other new whiskeys to mention this week, Bruichladdich iconic Yellow Submarine has returned to mark the distillery's 25th anniversary. Yellow Submarine 3 is a tribute to the early years when a yellow Ministry of Defense submarine washed up on the Isle of Coast in 2005. It's a 14-year-old single malt made from 100% Scottish barley with maturation in 75% first-fill bourbon barrels and 25% first and second-fill French red wine casks. It's priced at $134.99 a bottle. Diageo's Orphan Barrel label has released its 25th whiskey, which just happens to carry a 25-year-old age statement. Night Sage is a blended Canadian whiskey distilled at the Crown Royal Distillery in Gimli, Manitoba, and an undisclosed Ontario distillery. It was matured in a combination of first-fill ex-bourbon barrels and used Canadian whiskey barrels. It'll be available in limited amounts at $225 apiece. Nevada's Frey Ranch Distillery has reached the 10-year-old milestone. It's releasing its first 10-year-old age statement bourbon starting this coming Saturday at the distillery in Fallon, Nevada. There will also be an online lottery with 500 bottles up for grabs running June 15th through the 22nd. Utah's High West has released its annual edition of The Prisoner's Share, produced in collaboration with co-owned The Prisoner Wine Company. It's a blend of bourbons and rye that includes some of High West's own whiskey distilled in-house, and is finished in the Prisoner red wine barrels. It's priced at $175 a bottle. Scotland's Wolfburn Distillery is courting some legal trouble with its special World Cup bottlings, celebrating Scotland's first appearance in the tournament in 28 years. It's releasing 3 whiskeys, one for each of Scotland's 3 matches in the first round of the World Cup. There's a 10-year-old whiskey for Saturday night's kickoff match with Haiti, an 8-year-old malt for June 19th's match with Morocco, and a 12-year-old for the match with Brazil on June 23rd. The Drams for the Tartan Army set is being released as a 3-bottle set, at least until FIFA's lawyers find out about it. And finally, from the Crime and Punishment Department, here's why you should never buy bourbons on Facebook. A Kentucky man has been arrested for theft by deception. According to the Lexington Herald-Leader, he's been accused of selling whiskeys on Facebook, but then shipping the buyers packages with water bottles or apple juice instead. A UPS investigator called police in after complaints flooded into the UPS store in Madisonville, where James Willits and his associates were shipping the boxes out of. Police used store receipts to contact potential fraud victims and found Willits had, quote, sold about 97 collectible bottles for more than $86,000. Willits is scheduled for a preliminary hearing on Friday. You can keep up on the latest whiskey news all week long at whiskycast.com and in the WhiskyCast community app. Let's check the calendar now and see what's happening around the world of whiskey. Dundee's Whiskey Festival is this Saturday in Dundee, Scotland. National Bourbon Week kicks off next Sunday and runs through the 21st, with events around Bardstown, Kentucky to celebrate. Tickets are still available. The Aberdeen Whiskey Shop in Aberdeen, Scotland has a fierce beer and whiskey tasting Friday, June 19th. Sagamore Spirits' monthly Whiskey on the Waterfront party is on June 20th in Baltimore, Maryland. Moonshine University in Louisville, Kentucky has a Stave and Thief Society Executive Bourbon Steward course coming up on June 22nd. And the Isle of Arran Whiskey Festival is June 26th through the 28th in La Cranza, Scotland. If you're organizing a whiskey event, let us know about it. We'll add it to the calendars at whiskycast.com and in the WhiskyCast community app.
Every year, we've been releasing a Dewar's 19-Year-Old Champions Edition alongside the U.S. Open, a limited-release whiskey that's directly tied to the tournament. Now, 19 years is not a number you see every day on a bottle of whiskey, but in golf it kind of makes sense. The 19th hole, that round after the round, where the stories usually are a little better than some folks' scorecards. This year, the championship's at Shinnecock Hills in Long Island, and instead of just putting that on the label and calling it a day, we build it into the whiskey. After 19 years of maturation, this whiskey's finished in Cabernet Franc wine casks from Wolfer Estate, right there on Long Island. So there's a real connection to the place, not just in name, but in the liquid itself. On the palate, you'll get some of that red fruit, with a bit of floral lift and a touch of spice from the higher ABV, but it still drinks like Dewar's. Honeyed, soft oak, balanced, nothing is out of place. It also lands right around Father's Day, making it an easy gift. Limited release, once a year, with Shinnecock Hills on the bottle. Great for golf fans, but just really a well-made whiskey. Keep an eye out for it. Copyright 2026, Dewar's is a trademark. Imported by John Dewar & Sons Company, Coral Gables, Florida. Blended Scotch whiskey, 43% alcohol by volume.
WhiskyCast In-Depth is brought to you by Glendalough Irish Whiskey. Jeptha Creed Distillery is located just off Interstate 64 in Shelbyville, Kentucky. It's a grain-to-glass distillery with all of the corn for their whiskeys being grown on the family farm. Bruce Nethery holds down the fort at the farm, while Joyce Nethery and their daughter Autumn run the distillery. Bruce just had a whiskey named for him, Bruce's Blue, after the blue corn varietal he developed on the farm. I talked with Joyce Nethery this week on a Zoom call. Before we get to Bruce's Blue, let's talk about the history of Jeptha Creed. Where did the name come from originally?
Well, our home farm, where we still live, is at I call it the foothills of some hills, but when I was out in Colorado, it's like kind of silly for me to say that because they've got actual mountains, and the top of the knobs is 1,200 feet. So anyway, I call it the foothills of those hills is where our home farm is. And those hills, those Jeptha knobs, were named by Squire Boone and Daniel Boone when they came in and explored Kentucky in the late 1700s. They were attracted to those hills because there was a salt lick up there. So that's where the buffalo and the deer and the turkey were. So I like to say it was the grocery store of their day. And we found documentation that says they named him Jeptha after a biblical warrior in Judges 11. So we wanted to be all about our local history, heritage, and culture. And, my husband and I raised our children right there, and we live right there. We still live right there. So we got our personal family history right there. And then we've got local and state history connected with the Boones. And then I've got Bible history connected to the Jeptha with the Judges 11 piece. So I just think Jeptha is perfect for us, that it ties all that together. And then Creed is our promise to stand by honoring those values as we grow. So that's really where Jeptha Creed comes from. Okay.
How did you decide to get into distilling in the first place? Because you guys have been a farm family for generations, right?
Yes. The farm family part comes from my husband's side of the family. And yeah, my husband actually grew up as a dairy farmer. And his father was a dairy farmer, and his grandfather was a dairy farmer. And I believe his great grandfather was also a dairy farmer. It was definitely a farmer. So they've been farming in this area for multiple generations. And so we had a dairy of our own for a while and managed to hold on to it, even when the feed bill was exceeding the revenue from the milk. And we kept the farm and the tractors and the corn planters and all those pieces. So farming is in our DNA. But my background is in chemical engineering, and I have a master's degree and worked in industrial distillation for many, many years. And was distilling MMA, methyl methacrylate. And so that's in my background. And we wanted to build something for our children that they could use for their careers and or incomes in the future. And ground to glass distillery is what we came up with. So we're right here in the middle of Bourbon Country, in the middle of the Kentucky Bourbon Trail. And bourbon's just is part of the culture here. And putting together the farm with my engineering and being in Bourbon Country, a bourbon distillery just made perfect sense to us.
And you grow all the grains for your bourbon on the farm, right?
We grow all the corn for the bourbon on our farm. So like for the Jeptha Creed, we grow the Bloody Butcher varietal, which is the red varietal right here. I'll pull it out. This has been my travel bag of corn. So this right here is Bloody Butcher. So it's a beautiful red. And this is the one that we're using in the Jeptha Creed products. So all of the Jeptha Creed has some amount of Bloody Butcher in it right now. So that is what we grow or started with. And then like the red, white, and blue bourbon, Jeptha Creed bourbon, that one's made with the red Bloody Butcher, the white Hickory King, and the blue Bruce's Blue. So that is what goes into the red, white, and blue bourbon of Jeptha Creed. So we grow all the corn. Yes.
And then Bruce's Blue is the varietal that your husband Bruce came up with, right?
Yes, it is. So the Bruce's Blue is really, really cool. It is the varietal my husband developed. It is a combination of Blue Hopi and Blue Claridge. And he's kind of put it together because he liked the some of the growing characteristics of the Blue Hopi. And then we love the flavor and the look and the characteristics of the Blue Claridge, which this is kind of a Blue Claridge seed kernel right here, if I get it right there.
Right.
And so it's an actual dent. The Blue Claridge is actual dent, whereas the Blue Hopi tends to be more of a flint type. Yeah, this one has some Blue Hopi in it. So it's a combination of those two to get the good growing characteristics and to get the good dent corn. So he put that together and has developed it and keeps growing it on our property. So it's specialized to our farms.
And you turned it into its own whiskey, right?
And we turned it into its own whiskey, yes. So we have our own bourbon with the Bruce's Blue. So the Bruce's Blue is the same mash bill as our Jeptha Creed Bottled and Bond, except for the Bottled and Bond with Jeptha Creed is of the corn. It is 100% Bloody Butcher. Whereas with the Bruce's Blue, it is 100% Bruce's Blue corn. So we keep the, heirloom corns take some special care. They're really awesome because you can keep growing them and keep getting the same thing, but they take special care. So we harvest the seeds, keep them in a safe condition all winter, and then plant them back the following spring. And we do that with the Bruce's Blue. We do that with the Bloody Butcher. We do that with the Hickory King White. And then we have a couple of others that we've also grown out also that are going to be in our Solera product coming out in September. Yeah. So the Bruce's Blue is really cool.
I've poured a glass of the Bruce's Blue.
Okay. I'm going to get one too.
I love the nose on this.
It's really awesome. It is so different. One of the things that we have found is that the varietal of corn makes a flavor difference in the bourbon, a little bit like the varietals of grapes make flavor differences in wine. That the corn makes a flavor difference in the bourbon. And that's one of the reasons that, the Jeptha Creed is such a unique flavor profile because of that Bloody Butcher corn. That Bloody Butcher gives us a beautiful, deep, robust earthiness that I think is just super, super lovely. Now, the Bruce's Blue also gives us a beautiful, unique flavor profile. And it's very different, and I love it.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Oh, that's good.
Lovely.
Getting some touches of dates on there, some cocoa powder,
Mm-hmm.
a little bit of clove.
Yes. Yes, yes.
A little bit of white pepper.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice.
Also get a little bit, over the different times that we've been tasting it and blending it, we would get a lot of like a cola, cherry cola, and toffee.
I can get that.
So.
Your daughter Autumn is running the distillery now for the most part, right?
For the most part, yes. She is now been promoted to VP of Operations. So she has, obviously sales and marketing under her wings, and she's also now has production under her wings. So a lot of the pieces are now in her realm. So yeah, she's doing really, really well.
And last time I remember talking with you, your son was still kind of young, right?
Well, my son is now 27, and he is an owner of the distillery with equal shares with Autumn, but he is not working in the distillery. He's working in my husband's other companies, and actually, he's becoming a helicopter pilot. Yeah, he is. He's gotten his private license, and he's got all of the hours for becoming a commercial helicopter pilot. He just hasn't taken the test yet. So he's on the verge of becoming a commercial helicopter pilot.
That's great.
Yeah.
You can hire him to fly over the farm and check everything from the air.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And I can hire him to take me to different events. So it was kind of fun. Last year at Kentucky Bourbon Festival, he was able to fly me into the little airport there at Bardstown. So I felt kind of bougie. I could fly in rather than drive in.
Speaking of events, you've got a concert coming up this weekend, don't you?
No, that one has been canceled, but we do have two others coming up. We've got one coming up in August and one coming up in October. So we have a couple more coming up. Yeah. This one, it didn't quite sell enough tickets, so we had to cancel it.
Okay. You depend a lot on events, too, at the distillery, right?
We do them, but depending on them, I wouldn't use the word depending on them, because sometimes those suckers barely break even. But we do them because we think it's good to build community relationships and to allow people to come to the distillery and have fun in a different way than, just taking a tour or, going to the gift shop. That allows them to experience the distillery and experience what we're trying to do in a more multi-generational kind of way.
What do you see as I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, that's one of the cool things about those events is that we have a lot of families that come in that, you have the parents and the kids and the grandparents all come in together and get to enjoy the distillery and the cocktails and the bourbon and the music and the environment, all together. So it's one of the things that we like doing, but I wouldn't say it's something that we depend on.
What do you see as the future for the bourbon industry these days? A lot of distilleries are shutting down production and cutting back. Where do you guys fit into the picture?
Well, we have continued with production. We still have that going on. We see ourselves right now in a growth phase still, and we have managed to continue to have some growth in the industry and across the nation in different states, despite the difficulties that the whole bourbon as a whole is having. So we see ourselves still in a growth mode, and hope and pray that it gets to continue. I think bourbon is really just in a mode of correcting itself within the crazy economics that we've been having lately. There was such a growth but right before and during COVID, and then it kind of overgrew and needed to level out. So I'm thinking we're in just a correction mode, and that bourbon will continue getting to grow and people love and appreciate it as we go forward.
Your daughter Autumn came out with her own bourbon recently too, didn't she?
Yeah, Pepal's Ridge. Do we have Pepal's Ridge here? Yeah, it's one that she put together. It is really, really awesome. As a distillery, I guess we're starting to see ourselves as, because the company name, the distillery, is actually Rut and Strut Distillery. Jeptha Creed Distillery is our DBA. And before this bourbon correction was really getting started, we saw that for ourselves anyway, we needed to be able to branch out and to have a larger volume product that is based on yellow corn. And where, we were at the point where we needed to decide, well, are we going to change out the stills and build essentially a new distillery? Or are we going to, continue with what we have is stills and physically right now and be able to source some other bourbon? So, but even before this bourbon contraction, we decided that, because we move slow, we decided we needed to have a yellow corn bourbon, and that's where the Pepal's Ridge came from. And Autumn did put this one together. She developed this. She determined the need for it and put it together. And it's really, really beautiful. And it's already won double gold. So pretty awesome.
You must be proud of her.
I am so proud of her. Absolutely. She's doing great. She's becoming a great businesswoman and really good at managing people and keeping things moving in the good, right directions for us, for the business, and for, the whole family.
There's a link to the Jeptha Creed Distillery website in the show notes for this episode at whiskycast.com. And thanks to Joyce Nethery for joining us on this week's WhiskyCast In-Depth. It's brought to you by Glendalough Irish Whiskey.
Our story begins in the wilds of County Wicklow, the Garden of Ireland, a place where nature moves slowly and meaningfully. Some whiskies blend in. Glendalough Double Barrel stands apart. I'm Rowdy Rooney, head distiller here at Glendalough, and I personally oversee our whisky making process from start to finish. We do things slowly, and we do them right. We start with a smooth, single-grain Irish whisky. We age it in flame-charred American oak for soft vanilla and a honeyed depth. Then we finish it in Oloroso casks from a small bodega in Spain. Casks we season and ship ourselves to make sure the wood is still alive with character when it arrives. That kind of care gives Glendalough Double Barrel its rich layers of dried fruit, warm spice and signature smoothness. This is a whisky at its own pace, and it's worth every second. This is Glendalough Double Barrel, crafted to stand apart.
This week's tasting notes are brought to you by Lost Lantern Whiskey. Let's start off with the Bruce's Blue Bourbon from Jeptha Creed Distillery. Once again, it's made from 75% Bruce's Blue heirloom corn grown on the Nethery family farm, and it's bottled at 50% ABV. The nose has touches of honey, orange marmalade, cocoa, and almonds. The taste has notes of cherry cola, dates, clove, and white pepper, while the finish is long with touches of pipe tobacco, mint leaves, white pepper, and vanilla. It's a dangerously drinkable bourbon, and I'm scoring Bruce's Blue a 94. We had the actor William H. Macy on the show several weeks ago. He's also the spokesdude for Colorado's Woody Creek Distillers, and I received a sample of the 2026 William H. Macy Reserve Rye the other day. It's a bottled-in-bond rye, bottled at 50% ABV. The nose has baking spices, a hint of dill, mint leaves, caramel, and molasses cookies. The taste is spicy and bold with clove, allspice, and black pepper, balanced by honey, molasses, cocoa, and a touch of mint. The finish, long and spicy. I'm scoring the 2026 edition of William H. Macy Reserve Rye from Woody Creek Distillers a 93. I received a sample of the cask single malt from Japan's Kiyokawa Farm Distillery the other day. It's their debut release, matured in PX sherry casks, and bottled at 61.1% ABV. The nose is full of raisin bread, figs, dates, pipe tobacco, soft spices, and sweet oak. The spices come alive on the palate, which is peppery and fruity, dominated by white pepper with figs, dates, and raisins in the background, along with a touch of oak. The finish is long and astringent. I'm scoring the Kiyokawa The Cask Single Malt a 91. This week's tasting notes are brought to you by Lost Lantern Whiskey. Lost Lantern is changing how people discover American whiskey. Lost Lantern is not a distillery. They hit the road and hand-select special barrels from some of the brightest craft distilleries in the United States. Each release is limited, often a single cask, or a blend they create in-house. The label tells you exactly where it comes from and who made it, so you know the story behind what's in your glass. Lost Lantern, shining a light on the independent spirit. Let's open up the WhiskyCast community app now and see what people are talking about this week. I posted the entire Heaven Hill statement on the closing of the Few Spirits Distillery in the app this week, and we got a couple of responses. This one from Alan Chanel. It's disappointing that the press release emphasizes Heaven Hill's stewardship and support of the Few brand, yet nothing regarding the employees. Though I'd never visited the distillery, I was disappointed several years ago after the acquisition by Heaven Hill that its tours were discontinued. Much of the Few branding was based upon Chicago history. That tie-in becomes nonsensical if Few no longer remains a Chicago area distillery. Business is business, yet I appreciate when the impact upon employees is acknowledged. And Jack posted from Kansas City, this is an example of what many of us feared, a trailblazer of American craft who always made impressive, wildly unique whiskey, falling on the wrong end of a giant corporation's ledger. Dark times. After I shared the news about a buyer being found for Uncle Nearest, we got this comment from Bill Ricker in Boston. That sounds like a better-than-expected outcome, someone who will continue the brand right. And Greg added this, hopefully the sale works out and the brand can once again regain its footing and go on sharing the Uncle Nearest story. Let's hope so. If you have something you'd like to add to the conversation, download the free WhiskyCast community app from your app store and jump right in. You can also find us on social media. Look for WhiskyCast on X, Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, and Facebook. The email address is comments@whiskycast.com. Let's close out the show now with Behind the Label, our look at the history, science, and people who make whiskey unique. Scott Rogers asked this question the other day in the WhiskyCast community app. Why 40% is a minimum ABV for spirits in the U.S.? It's also 40% for whiskey in the U.K., but a lower minimum ABV for other spirits. Tequila and mezcal in Mexico is commonly bottled at 36 to 38%, so exports to the U.S. have to be bottled at a higher proof to meet our 40% floor. Is the U.S. 40% minimum based on something particular about the distilling process or a commercial convention? Is it an inheritance from British practice, or is there a distinct American tradition behind it? It's a question I've been wondering about, so I'm sharing it as a possible behind-the-label prompt. Well, Scott, that's a great question, one we have to go back to World War I to get the answer to. Before then, whiskey makers bottled in a range of 44 to 48% ABV or so, occasionally a lot higher. Back then, Britain's proof system ruled the day, and before we go any farther, to get the British proof of a whiskey, one multiplies the ABV by 1.75, so a bottle of whiskey at 40% ABV would be 70 proof under that now outdated system. Back to our story, though. British Finance Minister David Lloyd George was a teetotaler and wanted to cut down on alcohol consumption in the UK. When he became Prime Minister in 1917, he imposed legislation that set the legal maximum strength of whiskey at 40%, with the minimum strength of 28.6% ABV. While, thank God, that lower limit was relaxed after the war ended, taxes made it impractical to sell whiskeys stronger than 40% ABV, but eventually 40% became the minimum standard, and when the U.S. ended Prohibition in 1933, the government adopted 40% as the minimum for all distilled spirits. And before you curse David Lloyd George for sticking us with 40% ABV whiskeys, give him credit for brokering one compromise with the Scotch whiskey industry. When he originally wanted to double alcohol taxes as finance minister in 1915, he worked out a deal with the industry. They agreed to mature their whiskeys for at least 3 years, reducing the short-term availability of whiskey, and set a mandatory minimum alcohol level of 37.2%, hoping that distillers would sell fewer bottles. That's why whiskeys are matured for 3 years in Scotland, not because of any great intent to improve quality. That was a side benefit. Scott, thank you for asking the question. If you have something you'd like us to look at on an upcoming episode, just get in touch with us. That's all for this week's WhiskyCast. You'll find links for the stories in this episode in our show notes at whiskycast.com. That's also where you'll find the calendar of events, my tasting notes, and a complete archive of past episodes going all the way back to 2005. Don't forget to leave a review or comment in your favorite podcast app, and be sure to hit the like button. That helps other whiskey lovers discover the show. We'd love to hear from you. Look for WhiskyCast on all of the major social media apps. Our email address is comments@whiskycast.com.
Our latest release of Dewar's 19-year-old Champions Edition, finished in Cabernet Franc wine casks, made for the 19th hole, and one worth having around when you get there. Keep an eye out for it. Cheers, friends.
WhiskyCast is a production of Cask Strength Media, copyright 2026, and comes to you each week from the charming, yet regrettably dry town of Haddonfield, New Jersey. I'm Mark Gillespie, reminding you that when you drink, please drink responsibly. Thanks for listening. I'll talk to you next week.